Redpill me on the USA regional bank situation. Today, PacWest Bancorp, minus 27%. Western Alliance, minus 15%. Comerica Incorporated, minus 12%. Zions Bancorp, minus 11%. Regional banks are strong and resilient, Jerome Powell. Literal nothing burger, just another media-induced distraction. This is a GameStop-level nothing burger only talked about by GameStop bagholders desperately trying to be Michael Burry. Stock prices only reflect a company's perceived ability to generate profits. A bank can survive without generating profits for many years. What are the implications of the Mormons finally going bankrupt? They couldn't keep that stuff going forever. Distraction from what? From real life. From corrupt elites destroying Western civilization. From holding the persons responsible from being actionable. All media is a lie. All of it is meant to distract from reality. Go ask Paul if you need specifics. Someone told me this is all Trump's fault because of him deregulating banks. Is that true? I'm suspicious because the dude I was talking to effing hates Trump with a passion, but he's also pretty educated in finance and handles a lot of money for the company he works for, which gives him a bit of credence on the matter. Check this. When SVB collapsed, I immediately ran to my local bank thinking there would be a line out the door of people withdrawing money. There wasn't even a single customer. All of this stuff is a heckin' nothing burger. If it happens, then whatever, screw them. But I've spent most of my early adult life waiting 2 weeks for something to happen only to get disappointed time and time again. Even World War doesn't mean anything and I still have to wage. Heckin' hate it here on Earth. Just prepping additional GME victims, nothing to see here. Time to short. I will profit from the death of America banks. The 3 to 5 major banks in this country will just gobble up all the smaller ones. This is part of the Great Reset that started with COVID. Totally collapse or total infinite money printing, inflation. You can only choose one. Bullish for Bitcoin. JP Morgan will buy them all for pennies. Stock price has nothing to do with the performance of a company. So if my bank collapses, what happens to my overdrafted balance of $467? You may not like the answer, but pick related with great certainty. No capital reserve requirement since 2020. Nothing to invest in that's safe enough to collateralize zombie core. Banks buy tons of T-bonds long term. Powell rate hikes. All the secure bonds are now worth dookie. No capital to collateralize the zombie corporations that lose productivity and profit. Banks go kaput. Unless Powell starts to slurp worthless long-term T-bonds from 3 years ago and has the US taxpayer take the risk and cost, the Ponzi is done. USA is a banana republic dictatorship that has lost its standing in the world and is in the process of total collapse. Since over 1/3 of the entire economy is make-believe financialized BS, as the collapse happens, the banks will go to zero. Fed, buy my bags. Banks, okay. Fed, devalue old bags. Banks, negative yield curve. Fed, keep buying baggy or we shut you down. Banks, yes sir, may I have another? Fed, take it all bitch. Banks, we buck broke now. Fed, Velp, guess we're going to have to sell you off to a master because we prolapsed your anus. Pick related. Posts a new glowjack. Yes, I called you an astroturfing socialist already, thanks for confirming. I pity those that are still keeping their money in banks. Why can't everyone just self-custody their funds and pay with crypto cards like CryptMe Card, Alchemy Pay and others instead of relying on banks? It's the beginning of the end. They are killing the traditional financial system to usher in their CBD centralized slave system. They will swoop in and save the day with new technology. Elon and Trump are going to make mean tweets, they're CIA joggers, so it's just to keep up appearances. Big banks like JP Morgan are sucking up all the small banks' deposits for free. Long term we'll probably end up with a handful of mega banks controlled by the Fed. Say goodbye to your friendly local credit unions. Intentional destruction of smaller regional-sized banks so they can be bought and absorbed by larger ones. CBDCs will be easier to enact when they have a conglomeration of about 5 or 6 mega banks pushing them, so people will be less likely to escape to mid-sized banks who have yet to get on board. Plus, with all the manufactured uncertainty, depositors will feel safer using a bank that's considered too large to fail as opposed to one that may not have all the same perceived protections. Banks flush with stimmy cash needed a place to park it when rates were effectively zero. They chased yield by buying longer-term government debt at like 1%. Interest rates went up sharply. Now that debt is a terrible hold since they're still getting that 1% rather than 5% now. Bank customers see rates going up, they pull their money out of the bank offering no yield. Bank has to sell government debt at market rates, huge loss, to pay off bank depositors. Consolidation. The scary thing is what happens when Atlas is a fat slob with zero self-control and a leg that's going septic? Nothing, Powell is right. Two things. 1. SBV collapses out of nowhere and now no one really knows what regionals are worth. Most of these smaller banks appear to have liquidity as well, unlike the big ones like JP Morgan. 2. Many of these banks have a lot of investment in government bonds which have lost value due to rising rates and commercial real estate which is becoming bearish. Welcome to obsolescence. New country joins BRICS, said country pulls their money out of Western banks, Western bank fails. I hate the Antichrist. Classic sheep mentality. If you think the government will let the society make a recession, aka burn. Instead they'll print in waves and middle class will be forever destroyed for good. Every other country less resilient than USA is already doing it at a faster pace. On inflation, rich get richer, middle class get poorer, strikes happen, society goes to crap slowly. All charts on almost all big banks are insanely bullish long term, 3 to 5+ years. Except stock to go infinite while inflation rise infinite. Lame society leads to lame solution. Quite simple. The banking system is sound, the banking system is sound. Anybody with a sane mind would go infinite long here. People with stocks will be the new high middle class while everything goes to crap. Happening in France, European overall with a weaker currency, Turkey on hard pace, etc. etc. Look at Turkey's market, every big bank went on fire like cryptos in 2018. Good times. Usually when consensus hates something, money is on the other side. It's ogre. Unironically bullish for stocks at least short term. Check the date, now compare it to the start of the SVB clusterbuck, no thanks needed. Zions. Good, screw 'em. Where are all the people that were blaming the tech brothers for this? Everything is going to collapse in 14 days, Goldman Sachs is insolvent. Cali, New York and Chicago banks are failing. Literally 98% of the branches of the failed banks were from these places. This is not a coincidence, the media just refuses to talk about it. Bunch of silly heads pull their money out of a bank, or maybe some chosen short the bank stock. Question marks. Bank fails. U.S. government finds a kosher institution to take over the failed bank. American taxpayer dollars make sure all deposits are safe. Kosher institution doesn't have to pay back debt holders of failed bank. Bunch of people get fired from the failed bank. Jobs are lost, more people on the gibs. Chosens at JP Morgan or wherever get richer and richer. Normies don't know what's going on. Technically it wasn't a bankruptcy, so it's good PR for the kosher bank. Media spins a tale about it so the process can repeat. More and small banks absorbed into kosher banks. They will stop at nothing to find a new way to screw with people making between $50K and $250K a year. Bet no one will read this post anyway and go back to shitposting about the next Reddit meme stock or monkey face token. Which is the next bank in the list to collapse? Gold is worth more than In God We Trust, and now even the silly heads start to understand that. Should I leave my money in a higher interest savings or buy some real estate? Crypto is better. Invest in projects that deal with real-world assets. Non-fungible equities are ways to hold shares in crypto now. There's a parallel world growing that would absorb the crappy banking system as it stands now. They're all going down, including the big ones. Minsu 25%, minus 15%, minus 10%. Whoa, it's a new to Holocaust. Anyone going to post about PacWest/Western Alliance crashing 50% at open? More banks are falling as we speak. Is JPM going to buy them all for $1 like HSBC bought SVB UK? It honestly feels like the last 3 years have been a nightmare. Just an Orwellian hellscape, but with the most incompetent big brother ever. And even more evil. There should be intense rage directed towards everything our governments have done to us in these past 3 years. But of course the average person is so brainwashed and docile that nothing will happen. I had all my life savings in a regional bank. I'm at a loss of $40,000 currently. If they don't collapse, I'll come back in a few years. The banks are dying cloud. Unironically trust the plan. Powell knew the bank failures starting with SVB would start but still raised rates 25 beeps. Do not talk about US banks and USD's trade price is becoming the do not talk about Tiananmen Square of the US. Banks borrowed people's money, banks can't pay it back, simple as. Zions Bancorp, Keck, Zog Bank. TLDR? No way, I'm reading the whole thread just to realize it's another 2 more weeks. Senator Kennedy literally said it out loud on CNBC yesterday. Banks are just sophisticated Ponzi schemes. It's real simple. There's a democratic purge happening. They were running a RICO with China and various other nations that not only bled the US and eroded its military strength by facilitating the sale of classified and proprietary information but contributed to an unsustainable economic system. All the banks that are failing have ties to Democrats. SVB was one of the main hubs. Guess whose money was in it? Take a look at Dems perfectly timing the selling of their stocks before the collapses. Why do you think Schiff, Lightfoot, Pelosi and others were removed from committees and lost their positions? It's a purge. It's going to get worse before it gets better because this is what happens when you allow such treasonous tentacles to get a grip on America. They're a cancer. You can't allow cancer to grow. No unsustainable economic system means no funding for them. No funding for them means no Democrats. That's also why mostly Democratic liberals got the vaccine. Gee, what a shame all the smaller commercial banks are dying like flies. Guess we'll have to consolidate them under a few mega banks like JPM. It's so transparent what's going on here. The entire pandemic and subsequent financial crisis is just a means to move us over to a system where Rothschild and friends have absolute control over the distribution and use of all currency units. All according to Great Reset Keikaku. Work from home was designed to put the economy in an unrecoverable death spiral so they could have a reason to boot up CBDC, so Macs, iPads and wearables are down. iPhones are barely up and people sign up for cloud storage because they can't into local storage. Guessing this is gonna be pretty bad. The economy is fine. The Federal Reserve does have infinite money. The US dollar is the most powerful in the world so they can do whatever the heck they want with zero consequences. Stocks down, who cares? We need collapses. It's obvious that more banks will collapse and those still believing in banks will have themselves to blame. I already moved all my money off banks and now using CryptoMe crypto card to pay for all my bills. It's GameStop. That's literally all you need to know. The big banks are swallowing up the small banks and the taxpayers are paying for it. Hostile takeovers by other name. Always do opposite of what Fed says.